welcome, Glenridge.
Yes, hello Glenridge, I'm Patrick.
I'm Shannon.
And I'm Anna.
That's right, and we're going to be hosts for this morning, so good to have you. And first things up is...
Well, on Thursdays at 5:30 p.m, we meet here at the station for prayer and worship. So that's 5:30 p.m. every Thursday.
Right. And for those of you who are new to Glenridge, we have something called a monthly planner. It's a lovely little piece of paper. It's folded in half, and it has everything you need to know. So it's slightly prophetic because it tells you what's going to happen for this month of February. It also is slightly a word of knowledge because it also has all the lists of home groups. So if you're not in one, you can look at the monthly planner. It will tell you where the home groups are, telephone numbers, things like that there, and who to contact. So very important, the monthly planner.
And we've also got a website, glenridge.org.za. So if you don't have a monthly planner or you just don't have it to hand, you can always check out the website and our socials for any information on ministry dates and actually anything that's happening in our community that we think you should know about. We'll be there. For those of you at home who would like to give tithes and offerings, coming up on our screen are all our details. So please check them out. And we'd love for you to be able to contribute in that way.
Well, we've got a very special guest. He's going to be doing our sermon today. You might know him as the architect. Well, I know him as the guy who used to crib off my test sheet. Well, he did that once, and then once he failed, he never did that again. And fortunately for him, he learned that lesson, and now he's a successful architect. Him and his family are going to be, unfortunately for us, but lucky for the UK, going off to the UK. And today he's going to be doing our sermon. So please, Nigel Tarboton, also a member of Arapaho. Yes, that band. Yes, Nigel, the drummer. I remembered. Nigel.
So I sit here today. This is our last day at Glenridge as a family. Tomorrow evening we fly out to the UK on a one-way ticket. Future unknown, but full of excitement and encouraged by the promises of God over our family and over our future. So Stan has kindly given me the opportunity to share our story, and I must emphasize this is a story I'm going to share, it's not a preach. And the fact that it's a story, I think, gives me a little bit of flexibility to go there and then go there, and I don't know where we're going to go, but come with, and hopefully you're encouraged and can make some sort of sense of the journey that we've had. But just in terms of getting a little bit of structure in place, I've divided this into two parts. The first part is really a background to how Haley and I arrived at Glenridge, and the background is important because in thinking about it, Glenridge was already a part of the plan 17 years before I even set foot through the front doors of the church. And it really helps me and us understand what God was doing, his processes, right from pretty much when I was 13 years old. And, last time I shared at Glenridge was just over a year ago, and I shared about the time that I was stuck in my bedroom for 6 weeks recovering from an illness, and how God used that time to birth a dream in my heart that is still with me today. And that was exactly 40 years ago. And tomorrow we step into that dream, I believe, that he planted all that time ago. So at the time, the dream that he planted was to go and bodyboard in Hawaii. I was stuck in this room with 5 or 6 surfing magazines, international magazines. So obviously I didn't have much else to look at, but beautiful waves. But despite that, a dream was birthed. And I carried that dream right through my high school. And then I matriculated. And a few years after that, I was 19 years old, and I got an opportunity to travel to Hawaii. The door opened, and I was invited to a competition at Banzai Pipeline. So off I went. It was my first international trip on my own as a 19-year-old, and obviously I was expecting the highlight of the trip to be beautiful beaches and tropical islands and palm trees and amazing waves, and it was all of that. But the highlight was actually a moment on the way to Hawaii where I was flying into Los Angeles, and for any of you that have flown, you know the moment that the captain says to the cabin crew, prepare for landing, seats in the upright position, tray tables folded away, baggage stowed, all the rest of it. And, there's a lot of shuffling that happens for a minute or two. And then the cabin crew go and sit down and buckle themselves in. And then all of a sudden, there's this absolute silence that comes over the plane. And it's almost like the captain switched the engine off, and this plane is just quietly gliding in, and everyone's quiet. And by the way, get a window seat when you fly the first time, because fortunately I was at a window seat during this moment of silence. And as I looked out, we were coming in over the Mojave Desert, just miles of desert, and then you go over the San Bernardino Mountains, and then over the San Bernardino Valley. And from desert to beautiful mountains, suddenly evidence of humanity just arrived, and there was just this grid pattern of neighborhood after neighborhood after neighborhood, and suburb after suburb after suburb. It just went on and on and on. It was just so hard to actually comprehend from the context that I had come from, that something could be so big and so overwhelming. And this whole area was just sort of covered by this smoggy haze. You could still see it. You could see the grid pattern. And then cutting and snaking its way through this grid pattern of neighborhoods and suburbs were these incredible freeways. And you're looking at freeways that are 6 lanes this way and 6 lanes the other way. So you've got these 12-lane freeways. And they're packed, and there's cars moving, and there's no fast or slow lane. It's just everyone doing their own thing. So to handle those freeways, it's more a case of survival skills and driving skills. But be that as it may, so we nearing the landing, and then I look over to the side, and at a distance I just see these group of skyscrapers punching through the smog, and just absolutely awe-inspiring. I'd never seen skyscrapers before, and it was obviously downtown LA, and just all of this together was just a sensory overload. I was so moved by what I saw, and so, dare I say, impressed by what humans had done. But the reality is, Los Angeles means City of Angels, and I firmly believe that the bigness that was evidence in looking over the city from the air was just a bigness that was instilled by God. It's the City of Angels. Los Angeles is His city, and I was changed forever. I guess at that moment I knew that at some point I would be living in the city. I'd be a part of the city. I'd be a part of the 4 million people that make up the greater Los Angeles area. But for now, I was still going back to South Africa. But that certainly had a massive impact on my life. And again, that's something that I carried through with me. So I came back to South Africa. I was fortunate enough to go back 2 years later in 1990, and then again in 1992. 92 was no bodyboarding. It was just purely rock and roll, parties, rock concerts, bad behavior. It was a season in my life that is behind me, but it was what it was. But in that process, I decided I wanted to be in a rock band. So I came back to South Africa, got together with a group of my friends. We formed a rock band, and this was sort of early to mid 90s. And I remember right at the beginning driving past Kings Park Stadium with our bass player Gavin, and I said to him, "Hey Gav, when we get driven to Kings Park Stadium in a limo and we play to a sold-out crowd, I'm done with music. I'll hang up my drumsticks. That's what I want to do, and we can move on to something else." But amazingly, just doors started to open, and we next thing we're doing, recording albums and doing music videos and touring. We ended up opening up for Def Leppard, and we played with the Spice Girls. I met Prince Charles. I shook his hands, had a conversation with him. But I think the highlight was when we toured with Bon Jovi, all the stadiums around South Africa, as their opening act. And of course, we played Kings Park, and it was sold out. I didn't hang up my drumsticks right away, and I also don't recall being taken there in a limo. It was probably like a combi or something. But nevertheless, we played in a sold-out Kings Park, and the ironic thing is that there's no false humility involved at all. We were not great. We were not, and I speak for myself. I was never a great drummer. I was never a great musician. We were lucky, and doors opened for us. And again, there was just, I think we all just allowed big dreams to infiltrate our hearts, and we just went with it, and doors opened, and we found ourselves in really strange situations. But anyway, a few years after that, hung up my drumsticks, started building my architectural business, and it was around that time that, of all places, I went to a funeral, and across the room, I saw the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen, and I knew she'd be my wife. The problem was she had a boyfriend at the time, I had a girlfriend. So I did the right thing. I broke up with my girlfriend, and then I pursued Hayley for the next few years, and was highly unsuccessful. I tried drum solos in front of her. I tried walking in front of her all oiled up on the beachfront. I tried through friends. I tried everything, and I was quite used to, or I'd become accustomed to, my sort of confidence and my sort of tenacity to sort of get what I want, and I just got absolutely nothing. So after probably 3 years of massive effort, I called it a day, and I moved on, and it just, that time coincided with a friendship that I was developing with Greg Swart, who at the time was at Glenridge Church. Started telling me about Glenridge, started telling me about Christ, and next thing he took me along, and I remember walking into the DLI hall and couldn't believe what I saw. I thought we were going to like a traditional chapel where there was going to be pews, and we walked into this hall, and there was just chaos. There was loud music, there were flags being waved, all the different countries, and people were happy and exuberant, and it was amazing. And I just realized, so I kept on going back and back and back, and seeing more and more people that I'd known for years, and I just realized that I'd found my home, I'd found my people, but most importantly, I found Jesus. I got saved, I got restored, I got healed, and I really was ready to really start life. Yet those dreams, those big dreams that God had placed in my heart through the years, they were still there, but they needed to be outworked. And thank goodness now they were going to be outworked in alignment with God's purposes and His plan. But the amazing thing is, unbeknown to me, at the same time, Hayley was going through the same process at a church in Umhlanga Rocks at Emmanuel. She had got saved, and she had got into a community there, and she was being healed and restored, and I had no idea. And then at one point I had heard that Hayley was saved, so my sort of ears pricked up, and I was like, it's interesting. But for me, it was forward. I was chasing Jesus. I wanted everything. I wanted Jesus. I wanted to pursue Him. I wanted to know Him. I wanted to be involved in everything that the kingdom was about. So God orchestrated, again in His wisdom. One night, one of Hayley's friends from Emmanuel decided it would be a great idea if 4 or 5 of them visited Glenridge one Sunday evening. So they did. Hayley walks in and looks and sees me worshiping at the front. I never saw her. I didn't even know she was there. That was January 2001. By July 2001, we were married. So God had just orchestrated this incredible coming together, divine intervention. And, we've had, for the last 21 years, we've had the most incredible marriage. It has produced a lot of fruit. And I'm just so excited about the future. I never imagined marriage could be so good. And I look forward to another 21, 42, however many years we have together. It's exciting. And, when God finds your partner and you do it in His time, it's incredible. So we then started our journey at Glenridge together, And there are so many highlights. That's, as I said earlier, 24 years for me, 21 years together as a couple we've been here. So many highlights to talk about, but just to mention a few, we've celebrated together as a community, we've cried together as a community. We've just had such a richness and a fullness and an overflowing of life as part of this community. And as I said, there's just so much to talk about. But if I think of some of the highlights, it's obviously God orchestrating the divine intervention of Haley and I coming together in this church, the birth of our 3 daughters, amazing daughters. If I think of the friendships that have been formed, that will last forever. I know that. Amazing friendships. I think of the privilege of being on leadership in the church. We've had home groups. We've just recently started a home group in the park, in the Morningside community, and it's just such a different dynamic. And there we are out in the public, and God has just been so faithful. He's just come through, and he's just met us every time we've met in full view of the public, and he's just done what he's needed to do, and he's just been so faithful. Another highlight for us was Haley's healing after 3 years of severe depression, where we really had no idea if we were ever going to come out of it. God reached out and healed Haley, and now I see her ministering to people that are going through something similar. I see her sharing her story and her testimony publicly, and it's just amazing that I live with the evidence of a miracle. And God is faithful. He proves himself over and over and over again. I think of our professional lives. Haley is a teacher. She's taught at We Friends for the last 10 years. All 3 of our girls have gone right through from the infants through to grade R. And We Friends has been an integral part of our lives. As an architect, my business Metropole has been completely wound up in the DNA of Glenridge. I mean, just some of the highlights I'll never forget. Scott Walton on the front stairs of the church coming to me and saying, "Do you know what? Have you heard Durban wants to design and build an iconic stadium for the 2010 World Cup?" I think of the discussions around looking at the drive-in site for the possibility of creating a bigger facility for Glenridge, which didn't happen, but what it did do, it gave birth to what will become the Durban Iconic Tower, which is an incredibly exciting project, both for us, for me, and for Durban. And I think of just so many things. My partner Tyron was at Glenridge for many years, and people working with me at Metropole were from Glenridge. Graham Tedder from Glenridge had many years at Metropole, and Nadine Roper is still with Metropole. So we've just never been able to get away from Glenridge, and I tell you, I count that as an incredible blessing. I think of the traveling that we've done because of Glenridge, and I discussed the first few trips to LA in the 80s and the 90s, but just the transition from traveling to LA for the purpose of perfect waves and beautiful beaches, and then for rock concerts, and then to go back for the purpose of the kingdom. There's just so much more purpose behind that, and our subsequent trips to LA have been incredibly exciting. So really, that's a summary of us as a family, how we got into Glenridge, our time during Glenridge, and now to get into the sort of the part 2, which I would almost call the here and now. What is God doing with us now? Why are we flying out tomorrow night? How has he done it? What did the process look like? I mean, for years, sitting at Glenridge, we've seen people and families leaving, going to the nations. And I'd always wondered, well, how does that process happen? What is it? How does God do it? How do you prepare for it? Practically, what's involved? And hopefully, I mean, we haven't transitioned yet, we've gone through the first part. You know, let's talk in a few years' time, and I'll be able to give you the full picture. But yeah, for now, I hope the process that we've gone through is encouraging, and that it does inspire some of you to take the next step. So really, this here and now phase started for us probably 4 years ago, where we discovered that Haley was eligible for a UK ancestry visa, which took us by surprise. We didn't know, but the reality is the UK had never been on our radar. It had most definitely always been LA, especially for me. But yeah, especially for me. But as a family, we did believe that our inheritance is in LA. So the whole ancestry visa kicked off our process, our recent process. And then God used prophetic words, and he used his word, and he used personal convictions through the Holy Spirit just to kind of guide us and push us and nudge us in the right direction. And we've had many prophetic words from friends and people that we trust, and they were very clearly all saying the same thing. There was definitely a common thread towards LA, but then we got a very it was a key moment that we got a prophetic word from Carmen Ryans, who we trust implicitly, and she came up to us, and she came up to me, and she looked at me, and she just said, LA, 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 LA. And she said, but you're going to the nations, there's going to be some changes, and God is moving you. And she went on in great detail to explain what our future would look like. So what Carmen did, she painted the future. We didn't know how we were going to get to that future, but she had painted it, and it was clear, and we were excited. We really sensed that God was speaking clearly to us. But the challenge, as I said earlier, is we did not know how we were going to do this. I'd been applying for jobs. It's difficult. You got to get a work visa, and there's major hurdles to overcome to actually get into America. And so Carmen had painted the future, but we didn't know how that future was going to manifest. So we thought, well, what can we do? And we decided to mobilize, and we mobilized in two ways, and two very unspiritual, practical ways. The first thing we did was we started collecting all the documentation that we would need for this ancestry visa application to the UK. And that took a while. You got to get original copies from Scotland and from here and from there. So despite collecting all these documents required for our UK application, the call to LA never went away. And I felt, the best thing we could do as a family, because it was always part of the conversation at the dinner table when we were in the car together. At some point we're going to live in LA. God's called us to go there. And our kids had never been there, so they had no context of what LA was about. And I just thought what we needed to do as a step of faith was to take them over to LA, let them see it for themselves, and when we continue to have these conversations about our future, they would have a point of reference to understand and kind of get involved in the conversation. So this was a key trip. So on the way to LA, we stopped off in the UK because that's where all my family is, and we were there for about a week, and something incredible happened. God gave us the most incredible heart for the UK. So this was a trip about going to LA. We're in the UK, and we just fell in love. Not that we had never had a heart for it before. We always loved going there. Our family lives down these little country lanes, and just it's in the most beautiful parts of England. And Haley and I had always said every time we had arrived there, we could plant a church here. We could do this, we could do that, and it's always been somewhere that we could quite easily live, but it's never been what we've felt was the call of God over our lives. So anyway, so we're there for a week, and we just fall in love with it. But it was more than just that. God had given us a heart for the UK. So to be honest, I was really confused. We were about to fly across to LA to show the kids, and I had this heart for the UK that I hadn't had before. So we get on the flight, we arrive in LA, and it felt so strange. For the first day or two, I just couldn't stop thinking of the UK, and I was almost a bit frustrated with God, thinking, well, we've taken a step of faith to come all the way here. I'm confused. Is it the UK or is it LA? And I say the UK and LA, one's a country, one's a city, but the greater Los Angeles area is probably a similar size to the whole of the UK. So that's why I compare them in that way. But needless to say, I really was confused and a bit frustrated that, I wasn't sure where God was calling us to. So for the first 2 days in LA, I was very restless and unsure of what we were actually doing and why we were there. Fortunately, by day 2 or day 3, I was firmly back in the LA groove, and I felt like I felt like I was home. Was so happy to be there, and I just felt the presence of God. I felt His favor over us and over our family, and we just had the most incredible time. Interestingly enough, Brooklyn loved it, Tatum loved it, Luca didn't love it. I think she enjoyed it, but didn't love it, because God has given her a heart for the UK, and He gave that to her when she was about 4 years old, and it's never changed. So I could never also work out how this was going to work now, with our oldest daughter having a heart for one country and the rest of us having a heart for another country. So anyway, as part of this trip in LA, we had registered for a NCMI conference that was being held at the same time that we were there. To be honest, I didn't really want to go to it. We didn't have a lot of time in LA, and there was a lot we wanted to get through and show the kids. But we went for the first 2 days, and the most incredible thing happened on day 2. So we're sitting in one of the preachers in the morning, and a lady, I think she was from New Zealand or Australia, gets up and starts preaching from Luke chapter 14. And now, bearing in mind, I'm still wrestling with this LA, UK. And I really wanted to get some clarity on what we were doing and what our next step was, because we had mobilized and we were ready to move forward, and we wanted to take some big steps, but we needed to know what it was. So the lady preaching starts to read Luke 14. So I'm listening, and I've heard it before. It's the parable about the invitation. The master sends the servants out to invite people, and they're too busy, and they're doing this and they're doing that, and he's getting frustrated. So he says, well, go out to the street corners and invite the poor people in, and he does that. Anyway, so I'm kind of listening to this, know the parable, know where it lands up, and then she was obviously reading it from the New English translation, the NET version, because she read this line and it explained everything. And this is Luke 14, verse 23. It says, so the master said to his slave, go out to the highways and country roads and urge people to come in so that my house will be filled. Now, God knows what highways mean to me. Highways are Los Angeles. For those that know me, that have been for dinner at our house or even been to our office, our office for the last 15 years has had a massive picture, an aerial view of freeways in LA, and in our dining room as well. We've got that same picture, a smaller version, but it's highways in LA. And then the country roads. Haley and I, as I said, every time we've driven to our family there, we've gone down these little windy country roads through these meadows, and it's just the most beautiful, tranquil areas. And we've said we could plant a church here. So all of a sudden, the penny dropped. Why was I thinking it had to be one nation? God was saying, it's both. Go out to the highways and the country roads and urge my people to come in. That's his call over our lives, and I believe that's a call over my family's life going forward. So with that encouragement, we were able to leave the conference and go and enjoy the rest of our time in LA. But God had spoken. We'd gone all the way across to LA to a conference where God spoke to me personally, and he showed me what he was actually saying. So fortunately, we were able to enjoy the rest of our trip and fly back to South Africa very clear on what God had said and what he was doing. So we returned to South Africa, but the humans that we are still kind of was convinced that it was more LA than the UK, and didn't quite understand, because I couldn't figure out, first of all, how we were going to embark on this process that Carmen had so wonderfully sort of sketched out a year or two earlier. And I couldn't figure out how do you live in two countries, and how do you minister in two countries? Surely there's more to God's plan than just saying, well, you got to do both. So, I sensed God obviously saw once again, the sort of bit of confusion that had crept in. And then one day after church, Haley and I were having a coffee together up at Starbucks, and we'd been in there, had our coffee, and as we were walking out the door, our friend Mtoko, who used to be him and his wife Christy and their family were a part of Glenridge until they moved inland, and he just said, guys, as you walked in an hour ago, God spoke to me very clearly, and I feel compelled to share what he said. And he then went on to prophesy over us right in the doorway walking into Starbucks. And I won't go into the detail of the prophecy, but what he did was he explained in fine detail how I was going to extract myself from the responsibilities that the professional responsibilities that I was tied into, the financial responsibilities that I was tied into, and he spoke over our lives, and basically he confirmed what Carmen had said, but he said nations. He kept on saying many nations, many stamps in your passport of many different nations. But it was incredible. We knew that God had prophesied over our future. We knew that the nations were our inheritance, but we could honestly not see practically how it was going to happen, because I was so tied into things here in South Africa. And he came along and he just opened that up for us. So we sort of left that encounter quite shocked at how detailed Ntoko's prophetic word was, and how he knew, and but inspired and full of hope to walk into that future that Carmen had prophesied previously. So, we were sort of like, okay, Lord, like, what's happening now? You've prophesied over us. You've told us it's both countries. Then we went into the lockdowns, and everything kind of got put on hold, and we really didn't know where we stood, and we almost felt in limbo. We had started pulling out our roots, but now we couldn't fly, we couldn't travel. But be that as it may, we continued in what God had spoken over us. And then one morning, so part of the process of exiting South Africa for me was to exit my business. And to initiate that process, when lockdown was enforced, Metropole actually moved out of their offices. Tyron took all the guys back to his place, and I moved into an office at the church. And I've been here for the last 2 years, and it's been absolutely incredible. And one morning I was in my office reading, and again God just used scripture to speak very clearly for me. And he spoke to me from Deuteronomy 2 and then Deuteronomy 3, where it's Moses' account of what God had said to them before they entered the promised land. So to paraphrase Deuteronomy 2, it basically says you've been walking around this mountain long enough, go north and pass through the land of your relatives. So for me, that was clearly the UK. It's north, that's where my relatives are, and we're going to be passing through. How long we're going to be in the UK and how long it takes us to move on, the answer is found in Deuteronomy 3. It then says, and now I want you to go west across the Jordan to the promised land. And I believe at some point we will go from the UK. We're going to go maybe not west across the Jordan, but we'll go west across the Atlantic. And I'm sure we're going to land up in LA. God has spoken it over our lives. He's prophesied it, and we believe it. So when that happens, that it doesn't matter to us. It'll happen in His time, and that time will be perfect. But along with getting that scripture, we got our third key prophecy from Hilton Mandel. And he basically said, it's now. It's now. It's time for you to move. You've got territory to occupy. It's a time to cross over, and the time is now. Amongst a whole lot of other things that he prophesied as well. But for me, it was absolutely key. And if I look back at all three prophecies, we had Carmen's, we had Mtoko's, and then we had Hilton's. They actually all prophesied exactly the same thing. The nations going, God will do it. They all said the same things, but each prophecy had a standout. Carmen painted the picture of the future. We didn't know how we were going to walk into that future. Mtoko showed us how we were going to walk into that future. He gave us the hope. We didn't know when we were going to walk into that future and when that hope was going to be realized. And then Hilton came and he prophesied the time is now. So he gave us the timing of it. So prophetically, we were really locked in and secure and confident in what God was saying. So here we find ourselves. It's our last day at Glenridge as a family. And again, as I started out, I said we're incredibly sad, but I must be honest, we're more excited. And not only are we more excited for our future that is unknown, we're also excited for Glenridge's future. And it just seems that Glenridge is also on the cusp of major breakthrough, of change, of moving forward in some way. You can feel it in the meetings now. And since we've come into this year, there's been an incredible enthusiasm and confidence, and there's a mindset to go forward. And so in the last year, I've also been thinking, where does the future of Glenridge lie? And God has always given me very practical prophetic pictures, and it's things that I can see and I understand. When I see something, I do believe I understand what God is saying. And as I asked that question in prayer, I felt Him say, well, the obvious thing, if you want to know where you're going, look forward. And if you had to look at Glenridge and you had to look forward from Glenridge's point of view, you'd go and stand at the front door and look out, look forward. So I did that, and I thought, well, it's just a car park in front of me. And then I actually sort of opened my eyes and I looked a little bit further. Directly in front of our front door, as you look forward, there's a ramp going up. And then I realized that God had brought us up a ramp already from our last venue in the DLR hall. And physically, the building was bigger, yes, but spiritually, there was a ramp up in Glenridge's profile. We've never sought that profile, but we got profile in the city. And I just think the ramp that we've been driving up for the last 20 years in this building is really just signals the elevated profile that Glenridge has established within the broader Durban community. But there's more. There's another ramp, and I believe that the future of Glenridge there's another ramp coming. The profile will increase. I believe numbers will increase, and maybe even the physical height of the building is going to increase at some point. But we have absolutely loved you guys. One thing I'll say about Glenridge is that it's always allowed the power of the Holy Spirit to partner with the government of God. The Spirit has never been contained. It's been allowed to do its work, but there's never been chaos in this house. And it's a safe place, and we're going to miss it. We're going to miss all of you. and thank you for this incredible opportunity.
Thank you, Nigel. That was fantastic, and we look forward to hearing from you and your family's journeys in the great UK.
And please keep an eye out on our socials and our website for all the community information, and looking forward to seeing you all again soon. Ciao. Bye from us.
Ciao.
Bye.